I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: has the Alex Jones ban revealed a deeper problem? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because, well, it's twofold. I think there's actually two problems that may exist here that are worth considering in relation to the Alex Jones ban, and they go a little bit deeper than who Alex Jones is and what's happened in this specific scenario. The first issue here is the question around how much power corporations now wield in regard to social media. Because social media and social media platforms, whether we like it or not, they have now become the new public square. And it does seem this incident has revealed that social media corporations are able to wield the power over the public square now in a way that's totally arbitrary and is largely unrestricted. And that is very, very troubling, and I think it should cause us to ask some serious questions. Think about it like this. Imagine if a power company, a private power company, said, well, we're not going to provide power to Alex Jones because he uses that power in his home to run computers and run printers, and he prints off flyers that promote conspiracy theories, and we do not endorse that, and that's a violation of our standards, and so he will not be able to receive power. Or if a phone company said the same sort of thing, we would say, hold on a minute, that's a little bit odd. What are you doing here? Now, because of the fact that social media has become like the public square where ideas are discussed, I don't know if regulation has actually caught up with that fact. The technology, as is often the case, is outpacing the actual regulation and the way in which society is responding to that. So that's the first question. Do we have an issue here that requires some better regulatory oversight? Now, I'm not talking about something arbitrary. I'm not talking about the government imposing itself in a way that is unhealthy or unethical. I'm simply talking about the government ensuring that you have technology corporations who are not acting in a way that's arbitrary, who are not actually wielding an unjust power because of the privileged position they hold, the privileged position of control and influence that they now wield over our society. You have a very tiny number of companies who are all located in one very, very small geographical location on the map of the world, the entire world, who now control dialogue across nations, across the entire globe. And that should raise some big questions. But the bigger question I have, and this is the issue that really sort of struck me after a day or so of thinking about the reaction to the Alex Jones ban, and particularly my initial reaction. So my first reaction was, oh, what would happen to me if I was deplatformed in that way? So I lost my YouTube, I lost my Facebook. Let's say I got kicked off Twitter. I mean, obviously he wasn't, but let's say I did. And I didn't have access to social media anymore. What would it mean for me? You know, a lot of people were saying, well, how will Alex Jones earn a living now? I thought about my own situation. And I thought, well, how would I make the world a better place? How would I connect with people? And you know what? All of a sudden I realized, uh-oh, something's not right here. The technology has now started to invade my life in such a way that I think, too dependent on it. You know, if I'm having to ask the question, well, what would I do? How could I contribute to the world? Well, you just get back out into the real world and start living real life. That's what you would do. You don't need social media to do that. And I do wonder if this incident has revealed a little bit how uber dependent, how far too dependent we have become in a lot of situations. We have allowed social media, that particular technology, to begin to dominate us rather than allowing us a sense of perhaps liberation or freedom or greater flourishing. It's actually starting to limit our flourishing and to limit our imagination. We only think of ourselves in the context of our relationship to this technology and what we can or cannot do on this technology. And I would argue that that's not a good thing, because ultimately what you get online, while it may be enjoyable, and by the way, I'm not a Luddite, the technology is good, it has its uses, but ultimately we must recognize its limitations. Social media does not actually build greater levels of community. It actually can increase our communication capacities. We can communicate with more people and much further abroad, and it increases our ability to be or to experience greater levels of connection. We can connect with more people, and we can connect with people over a greater distance than we ever could before. but that's not the same thing as community. Community is not simply about being connected. Community is not simply about communication. Community is where people actually genuinely meet each other, and they don't just connect, but they commune. They give of themselves to the other. They commit to the good of the other person. They actually engage in real flesh and blood, physical connection with other people. They sit in a room and they socialize with them. They go and do kind acts and gestures towards them. They reach out with an actual physical hug. These are tangible acts of community, and the internet is no substitute for that. Social media is no substitute for that. In fact, it's a very inferior parlor trick if you think that you've got greater community online. You don't. You have greater connectedness, and it's not a bad thing. And you enjoy the ability to sort of perhaps enhance community, but it is no substitute for community itself. As I say to young people, when I'm often asked to go and talk in high schools about, effective use of social media and how to do this well. And one of the things I always ask people, the first question sort of straight off the bat is, has your social media use, has it become the whole cake, or is it just the icing on the cake? Because it should be the icing on the cake. The technology's good, it's got lots of advantages, and it can help us to communicate well with people, but it should be the icing on the cake, not the whole cake. And if it's become the whole cake, you're trying to live most of or your entire life online, and that's how you're forming your relationships, there is a big chunk of the human experience that is missing. You are missing out on life in the real world. Look, when my brother and a mate of mine, we went hunting a couple of weeks ago, and we spent a night on the side of a mountain. We pitched our tents, and we had a few whiskies and a bit of a chat. And then we packed up the tent the next morning and walked the top of this ridge line on top of this mountain hunting deer. There was something about that experience that's very tangible and real. That's a communal experience. We actually participated in community, and we did that thing. And then we got home, and we found a bit of internet coverage, and we posted a photo of us on top of the summit of this mountain. It was the icing on the cake, but the experience itself was not lived on social media. It could not be lived on social media. The connection with those other people that was genuine and real and deep did not happen on social media. It happened on the side of that mountain, on the top of that mountain actually, in a forest. It happened for us in the journey, in the struggle and suffering of trekking 3 hours up to the top of a summit and then having to trek back down again with a heavy pack on your back. It happened in the joking and the storytelling. It happened in the shared bonding that we went through. So the icing on the cake was the social media, but the cake itself was life in the real world lived with other people. And I sort of wonder, as I've said about this Alex Jones incident, in actual fact, whether or not it's highlighted that maybe just that we have become too dependent on social media and that we're trying to live too much of our human experience on social media. It's a question that I think is not just worth asking, but repeatedly worth asking of ourselves in order to perhaps limit the excesses and avoid falling into that trap, because when you do, you end up becoming very, very lonely because you're very isolated. When you connect with other people, that's not the same thing as forming genuine community. Connecting with people over technology is connecting on your terms. It's very much a silo. It's two silos, or a group of people in their individual little silos connecting with each other. You are looking at pixels often, not always, obviously with video that's changed a little bit, but often it's pixel-based communication. You're not there present with them. You can communicate on your terms. It's a very isolated and narrow kind of thing. In the real world, the people that you are seeing every day as you move about your business, you are often not actually making genuine connections with them, because instead you're connecting with people who might be thousands of miles away via this new technology, but you're not actually forming those meaningful connections with other people who are right there in front of you. And so we can end up becoming very, very lonely in that situation, very isolated, and it's not good for us. And on top of that, the way in which media algorithms work, we get stuff suggested and thrown at us now based on what we're looking at, and so we can end up very easily going down our own ideological rabbit holes, or our own political rabbit holes, where effectively this tribalism gets entrenched because the technology keeps pulling us further and further apart. It says, hey, you like that video by that guy? Here's another 10 videos about that same thing from that same perspective. Keep feeding that idea, but don't watch these videos because they're different and they offer a different perspective, and you don't want different perspectives because we know that you want to watch that, right? And so the problem is that we start limiting our perspectives, our view of the world, instead of becoming wider, actually ends up becoming narrower on social media. The supposed advantage of being able to connect with lots of different ideas in actual fact, it's starting to look very limited based on the algorithms and the way in which we are pulled into the rabbit hole now of one particular strand or way of thinking about things or one particular ideology. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below and a link on screen at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.